much, Wai, for the very kind introduction and also for the time to be here today. And thank you to everyone to join us, and to the other panelists as well. It's such a pleasure to be among this group. We were also happy to be at one of FASS Asia's summits, and it's truly one of the most amazing gatherings of people. So I'll just share a little bit about the work that we're doing in Southeast Asia, where we're building also open source tools for climate adaptation and humanitarian aid. I just share my screen. Can you see this? Okay, so to start, I just want to share a little bit of context first. And I start with these two images, which are both images of the central business district of Jakarta, which historically never experienced flooding. And we see in both these images that they're completely flooded. And what I want to point out about this is that the reason for both of these events was an infrastructure failure. In both years, there was a portion of the canal wall that broke, resulting in flooding of in areas that were historically never flooded before. And what's really important to point out about that is that no matter how much computation we have, no matter how much predictive modeling, nothing could have predicted these events. Nothing could have predicted that the walls would break at these points and then flood these particular neighborhoods. And what we're experiencing with climate change is a greater intensity of weather. So in terms of the flood, as it's more rain falling in a shorter period of time. And what that means is that the infrastructures that we have in our cities that are supposed to contain that water aren't able to handle this increased intensity of the climate. They can't keep up with the speed at which the climate is changing. And so as a result, they are bursting and breaking unexpectedly, which causes sudden and unexpected disasters. And so this really requires us to think about different forms of infrastructure for climate adaptation that are far more flexible and adaptive. And so we know that during a disaster, information is the most important resource. It's critical to make timely decisions about safety and response, both on a personal level, but also for government agencies and for humanitarian groups who are distributing aid. They need to know how the situation is changing, and in order to understand how they can get to certain places or which places are in need of help. And while rapidly urbanizing cities like Jakarta or Manila are often thought to be data scarce, this perhaps comes from an idea that there isn't a lot of formal data, but if we look in other areas, we see that there is actually a lot of data there. It just exists in different forms. And in fact, the region that we're in, the ASEAN region, has 100 million more smartphones than people. And so we see that there actually is a lot of data there. It just exists in different forms than we may be traditionally used to. And so as we see in this image here, which is a very typical Indonesian image, it's also a very typical image in the Philippines, is that even when people are standing in the flood, they are taking selfies, they are sharing information. And if millions of residents all over the city are sharing this information about evacuation routes, about community efforts, and all of these posts that they're sharing have, most of them have photos and all of them are geotagged, they are tied to a specific coordinate, then that actually provides a data source of unprecedented resolution to help response and coordination. And so our question was, how do we turn this into actionable information that allows people to make informed and evidence-based decisions? And so instead of passively data mining, our team developed an open source software called Cognicity. And how it works is that it actively engages with residents to confirm their situation. And to briefly illustrate this, our software is designed to listen for specific keywords on social media posts. So for example, here, if the post contains the word flood, then we send an automatic reply. We have chat bots that will send these automatic replies saying, "Hi, I'm DisasterBot," and asks the users if they would like to confirm their situation and submit a report. And if the user responds, they are guided through a few simple steps to submit a report, which includes confirming their location, adding a little bit of detail about the disaster. So in this image, it's the flood height. And then they have an option to add a photo and additional free text description. And as soon as they submit that, in less than 0.01 seconds, that report is plotted on a real-time map. And this is a map that's, it's web-based, it's free and accessible for anyone to use, and it's designed to be extremely data light. And so this is a method of crowdsourcing that allows us to reach millions of users, allows us to pull information from street level, from the people who know the situation best because they are experiencing that. And on the screen is a sample of some of the types of reports that we receive. So people are sharing information about broken infrastructure, or even like if there's a blackout, they're also reporting that there's a blackout because the pole has fallen, or if there's a particular need that they have, they're sharing that as well. And then we also work with government agencies who are monitoring the map in real time in order to understand and respond to resident needs. And then we've also developed a mechanism for them to input formal information onto the map. And so in this way, we now have this two-way transparent information sharing, which has improved real-time coordination. It's a way for the government agencies to much more quickly share information with residents who are in need of that information, and for residents to share information of what they need as well. And as a result, the government agencies that we've been working with say that it has significantly allowed them to increase the speed of response because they're able to more immediately and more effectively allocate rescue and resource efforts to the places that really are in need of it. But I think more importantly, it allows everyone to more equally participate in decision-making and resource management in their communities, especially during crisis events. We say that it has democratized decision support because instead of concentrating decision-making in a small handful of people sitting in a control room, effectively what this does is it makes that information available on everybody's mobile phone. So everyone has access to that same information and can participate in this cooperative process to both self-organize within their community. So they're not having to wait for external response before being able to help themselves and their community members, but then they can also facilitate greater coordination among several sectors of the city. And then fundamentally, our method is completely arises out of a method of collaborative co-research with the widest variety of stakeholders and user groups, from government agencies to academics and activists and people living along the river, along the volcano, in earthquake-prone areas. The parameters of the software arise completely out of a process of co-research that, you know, out of the conversations we have with all of these groups, that's what informs the design, and it's a iterative process. So it's constantly being updated based on the feedback we have and based on the conversations, seeing how the perceptions of risk are changing or how the hazards are changing every year. We also operate in an open framework, so all of the data is open and it's being pulled by several other agencies to complement their existing data sets and to support them in their efforts for response. But it's also, besides real-time response, it's also being used by other agencies such as NASA and the Indonesian Space Agency, as well as companies to both plan for the safety of their employees, but then also for research and future planning purposes as well. And so it started as a real-time flood map in Jakarta in 2014. Now we are a multi-hazard map for all of Indonesia. So it's for several hazards as well, not just for flooding. And we have a pilot in the Philippines, and by the beginning of next year in January, we will be at a national scale in the Philippines as well. And the reason that we've been able to scale so wide on an extremely small budget and a very small team is because of the time and energy that has gone over the years in developing this as an open source software that was designed from first principles to be transferable by geographic region, by hazard type, and by language. And so right now it's already being adapted by several groups across the world, including in Vietnam, Hong Kong, and India right now as well, and to address a variety of urban challenges not limited to disasters. And we're currently working on building this network of users who can use the software as a free tool to reappropriate the data in social media and use it for forms of urban coordination that are really fundamental for allowing residents to work together. And so that's it for a brief overview of what we're doing here, and I look forward to the discussion.